Someday, when the time comes to deliver the final ultimatum, our surrender will be voluntary, because by that time, we will have been weakened from within spiritually, morally, and economically. He believes this because from our side he's heard voices pleading for peace at any price, or better rev than dead, or as one commentator put it, he'd rather live on his knees than die on his feet. And therein lies the road to war, because those voices don't speak for the rest of us. You and I know and do not believe that life is so dear and peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery. If nothing in life is worth dying for, when did this begin? Just in the face of this enemy? Or should Moses have told the children of Israel to live in slavery under the Pharaohs? Should Christ have refused the cross? Should the patriots at Concord Bridge have thrown down their guns and refused to fire the shot heard round the world? The martyrs of history were not fools. And our honored dead, who gave their lives to stop the advance of the Nazis, didn't die in vain. Where then is the road to peace? Well, it's a simple answer after all. You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay. There is a point beyond which they must not advance.
This is Dave Laird with Armed Republic Radio, and today I've got a really awesome guest. His name is Dave Jenkins. He has a background in law enforcement experience. He has a very extensive background in firearms training. I was going through his resume, and it's just list upon list of a lot of fun folks that I've done some classes with. Dave Jenkins, thanks for joining us today. How you doing?
No problem. Hey, Dave, how are you?
Fantastic, as best as we can be under the given circumstances for the two of us kind of meeting. I followed you on Facebook for a long time. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I run a little training company here in New York, and I keep getting comments from people in states like where you are, like what we jokingly call the free part of America. And, and then we kind of joke about New York. We call it New Yorkistan. So, it's sometimes it's not much of a joke, but I've been doing this for a while. I became a certified instructor in the early 90s. Back when I was probably like 12, somebody said. And then I started my company in 2005. And I decided, I wanted to be able to do more and give more back and start working with people. And so I just created a company. A lawyer buddy of mine helped me set up the LLC. And I must have been doing something right, because in 2008, it went crazy and I went full time. I quit my full-time job and I just started doing this all the time. And I haven't looked back.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to get started. I got to tell you, word of mouth is king in this industry.
Oh, yeah.
Word of mouth travels fast, both good and bad. So,
as we've seen, the bad word of mouth travels way faster.
Way faster.
So we've got to do it right, and that's kind of how I've gotten to where I am. We're the predominant trainer in Western New York. In fact, probably in most of New York State. We carry a big footprint, and the places where we go and travel, we've got some hosts that have been traveling, or we've got some hosts that have been bringing me out to them, and I've gotten immediate requests for more. They want to see me more. They want me to come back more because my stuff makes sense. It's not flashy. It's not, I don't have this, I guess you could say, this persona.
Yeah.
That everybody wants to gravitate towards, like some of the instructors do. It's just, I show up, I'm training you. Yeah. And I'm going to teach you how to save your butt. And there we go.
Okay. Down and dirty. This is how you do it. Lots of fun. So like you've been doing this for how many years now? 2005. It's 2022. Almost.
It's been a while.
You're getting old.
I'm coming up on 20 years.
You're getting old. You ready to hang up the hat? No, you got another 20.
I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to be someone like I don't want to be like some of these guys that they don't realize it's time to retire.
Yeah.
But I'm going to keep going until I can't find a reason to do it. If I can stay relevant and I can provide good training and I can influence training, at some point I might take a step back and just do certain classes and let my team do more, but I don't have any plans to retire. I'm going to keep going and going and going until I finally decide, what? It's time to go sit somewhere and watch others take a stab at it.
Have you got your own range there? Or are you predominantly using other folks' ranges?
I use a number of local clubs for it. I've tried to look into building my own range, and
It's not
one
common.
of the
It's expensive.
one of the toughest things in New York State is to get all the zoning acquired. If I moved just one state south of Pennsylvania, I could probably have a range built inside of 6 months, and for probably a third the cost.
Yeah. Well, and in my past, I worked for a large company, and in total, we built 3 ranges, indoor ranges.
Okay.
And the cost of that's actually how I met Dave Spalding. I invited him out as a guest host instructor to come and do classes at our facility a couple of times a year. And great guy. Loved getting to host him. I know he was a little sketch, probably didn't know what to think the first time, but every time I booked a sold out class, he's like, damn it, Dave, I got to go back to Arizona.
Darn it.
I'll have to visit Tombstone again and check out Wyatt Earp. He's a big one.
Yeah. Well, now that
So he could
I'm one of
resist.
his certified guys, I have to start carrying the mantle. So maybe I'll have to come down and play.
Hey, I would gladly host you out here and introduce you to people in Arizona. A lot of world-renowned trainers live here, do classes here, but it's really odd. Like, we have just so many ranges here. Our state's
Mhm.
actually building 5 more outdoor ranges because of our population growth.
And the state's building these. That's awesome.
The state is building them. Oh yeah, dude. We have America's largest shooting range, but it's being surpassed right now by Cameo Shooting Sports in Grand Junction, Colorado. I've been blessed
Okay.
there and do some classes up there too. But Ben Avery's a really big range. It's got some good sponsors to help with it. But yeah, there's a lot of ranges. There's a lot of instructors, and so there's a lot of shooting going on here all the time. We are big, avid outdoor. But I remember back when we were building indoor ranges, so what really surprised me was the overall cost to meet a lot of the standards now for recycling the air, cleaning the air, the filtration
Yep.
system. You're Back then, it would have been 2019 was the last range. It was about $30,000 to $45,000 per lane.
Yeah.
In this big metropolitan city, like, you got to have 25 lanes or more so that people aren't waiting in line to get in there and shoot. But I mean, we deposit lead like mad in Arizona.
Oh yeah.
It's a good thing. I mean, we haven't probably, with the COVID and prices and all that here lately, but we still stay busy. Our slow days are still pretty busy.
Well, that's good.
So tell us, what type of training do you do? Because that leads into the caveat about this special thing that we're coming up to.
Yeah. Yeah, we could spend the hour talking about training alone and not even touch the topic. The training we do everything from basic level stuff to advanced concealed carry. We've kind of absorbed from a lot of different sources between SIG Academy, Blackwater Academy, of course, Spalding. His methodology actually blended with mine very well, and that's what it kind of made sense for me to approach him about being an instructor with him. But it's more realistic, effective, and efficient self-defense with a firearm, and we also do less lethal and unarmed as well.
Okay.
So we want to have the whole sphere of self-defense. We want to make a well-rounded person out there carrying a gun,
Sure,
so that they can have a response to pretty much anything that they get thrown at them.
options.
Right?
We like
Options, right? We used to say you want more tools in the toolbox, right? Well, not really. You want to have like 2 or 3 tools that'll solve everything. And that could be your brain, your unarmed skills, spray, and the firearm. You've got the whole gamut of the force continuum. So we kind of have developed into the concealed carry trainers of New York State and in this area. We won't, I know guys out there that are teaching, all the competition skills and all of the, you're training people on the gear belts and they're running them on those. Yeah, we'll train you on those too, but our forte is concealed carry, and it's the concealed carry holsters and the skills that go along with getting you to recognize that there's a gunfight coming your way or a fight coming your way, and deciding what skills you need to bring to the solution to make it happen so you can go home alive.
right. And we say tools for your toolbox. So
yeah,
I've always told folks, like, if all you do is carry the gun, then you've got one hammer for every job.
Yep.
You know, so you might want to think about other stuff, you know. And there's a lot of folks I know that, you know, they enjoy shooting, and they like going to the range and maybe target practice, but they don't feel comfortable carrying it with them all of the time. It's more like a home thing. So, you know, it always opens up that question. Well, what do you do when you're out and about? You know, oh, well, but my work doesn't let me carry it. My work doesn't let me do this, or you know, the transportation that I take doesn't permit for it, all that sort of stuff. And so it's good to be more well-rounded, like you said, the mental part, getting to teach that, and having just some good hand defensive skills, because like you're more likely to get into a physical altercation than maybe a deadly physical altercation. So
Right. Yeah.
have all that knowledge. So
You
New
know,
York,
I've been in a few scrapes, and you know, most of them were solved by wit, verbalization, proximity change, and you know, softer stuff. And only a couple of them where the firearm even became deployed to start the solution, and then the solution usually worked it out. So it's a vast majority of things are not going to be a gun solution.
what's the weirdest thing you've ever been confronted with?
Well, I got one. I just told this story a couple weeks ago. Somebody was asking me about, like, they actually phrased it like, what was the oddest situation you've been in?
Yeah.
And I give you the one that I told them a number of years ago, almost feels like a lifetime ago. I was doing some, it was most basically like a private security detail for a guy here locally in the city. And there was 3 of us on this, and I was the street guy. You know, we had a car guy, we had the guy that was with the principal, and then I was the street guy. I was just watching the in-between part.
Your lookout.
I was pretty much the lookout. Yeah, exactly. And he was the other guy was the getaway driver.
There you go.
So what happened is, of course, I'm standing, and our uniform for this individual was, a suit and an overcoat. And we had radios, and we had communication, we had signals. And I'm standing in the street just watching things, and this dude walks up to me. I picked him up right away. He could have been in a movie as the bad guy. And he whips out a knife and he goes, "Give me your money." And I look at him and I laughed at him. I went, "No." And he just looked at me like I just slapped him. He's just, like, how dare you say no to me in his mind? And he goes, "What?" I go, "No, go away." And he's like, "But I got a knife." I go, "I don't care." And he was just dumbfounded. And I'm sitting there going, I can't believe this is working. In my mind, I'm going, this is not going to work after the next few seconds. I got to start doing something. And then something caught his attention. And let's just say I deployed a defensive tool. And by the time he turned around, it was looking at him, and he was looking at it, and his eyes just kind of went like this.
Yeah.
And he took off. And he took off so fast, he left his knife and a sneaker on the street right where he was standing. And
what about him looking back on it, what about him seemed very threatening? What about it made you laugh? Was it like the way he held it, the way he asked?
I think it was kind of, I was looking at him like, really? I'm here in a 3-piece suit. I'm clearly standing by a car who, this is not the car you probably want to go, "Hey, give me some money. Give me your wallet, give me your car keys." It's just, it didn't fit.
Right?
What's that?
It's a conspicuous SUV.
It's very conspicuous. Yeah. And we're very conspicuous.
Suits standing outside of it. Like, really? This is who you picked out of a crowd of people?
Like, your victim selection criteria needs some work, dude. And I just laughed at him.
I think you need to work on your lookout skills. You weren't looking sketchy enough in your 3-piece suit.
Yeah. And I did see him coming, and we were talking on the radios, and I told my guy in the car, I'm like, "Okay, hey, I got this guy approaching me. He's coming up and everything." And it wasn't a surprise. It was just like, really? I saw this coming, like the train on the tracks from 40 miles away. I could see it coming.
You just hear it slowly in the distance. Chugga, chugga,
yeah.
Chugga, chugga. And you're like,
Here he comes. Here he comes. And I'm like, "Hey, dude, check out that dude over on the corner." "Yep. Okay. Got it. Yeah. Okay. What's he doing?" "He's walking up to you." "Okay. Keep an eye on him. I'm going to pretend that I'm not staring him down."
He's going to have a very short career.
He would have had a very short career. It wouldn't have worked out. He chose to change his victim selection at that moment, I think.
All right. So here's my funny story.
Okay, go ahead.
years ago, there was a televised event, and I was invited in the morning to go to do an interview on the television. I remember that because that's what I was thinking about in the moment. My wife had said that there's this new restaurant that she went to for lunch earlier in the week, and she's like, "Hey, let's go to it." And I didn't even think about it. She said the address, and it's like in the sketch part of South Phoenix, in our area. But it was like an all-you-can-eat Chinese food buffet. And my wife and I are just knucking futs for Chinese food, Mexican food, seafood. Like, we are foodies. And so we packed the kids up in the car. We just went down there, and it was, getting in the evening time. The parking lot was packed. So I was like, oh, this is going to be some really good food, right? Really good food. So we
It better be.
and we go in, and I want to say Arizona is pretty well rounded. Like, there's a lot of different ethnicities and stuff like that. And it's not common. Me and my wife, we have some of our favorite like Hispanic food restaurants and stuff. It's not uncommon for us to go in there and be the only ones that glow in the dark. So we went in there. We were the only ones, and I was like, I don't care. I can see just row upon row of food selection in front of me. It's like, we're gonna go tear that up, baby.
I'm here to eat. Let's go.
And my wife's like a 90-pound nothing. Okay. I mean, 90-pound nothing, but I mean, she's a foodie. So we sit down, and the tables are packed in so tight. I mean, I can't tell you how many hundreds of people. It was like, I've been into some small cantinas where they pack you in elbow to elbow, but to see a restaurant this size where they pack you in elbow to elbow. And again, I didn't care. I mean, I could have reached over and scooped up food off my neighbor's plate. But it didn't matter, because it's like, okay, it's all you can eat, right? So we're getting through dinner, and I noticed that there's like this small Hispanic female sitting in a booth to my left. I got my kids there between us, and it looks like she's there with her parents and like a gentleman maybe her age. And she kind of keeps glancing at me through the corner of her eye. So I'm thinking to myself, does she know me? Does she recognize me? It looks like she wants to say something. And so I just glance from time to time. I try not to really pay a whole lot of attention to her. And I had just gotten a tattoo in my arm, so I'm literally wearing like a wife beater to let that tattoo air out. I've got my shorts. I didn't bring all my defensive tools with me because it's just like a quick bite to eat. We're gonna go home. And the wife says, "Hey kid, you want dessert?" And they're like, "Yeah." So they're over there. They're getting their dessert. And then all of a sudden, I'm glancing over again, and this girl jumps up out of her booth, and she starts yelling at me. She's like, "Hey motherfucker, what the hell are you looking at?" I was like, "Whoa!"
Okay.
I had my fork in my hand, like she's standing up now, right? I had my fork in my hand. I go, what do I do? Do I stay work? I'm thinking about all the tools that I have, right? And I was like, no, she's a girl. I was like, I can manhandle her. And I was like, how's that going to look? I'm the only white guy in a restaurant. I'm going to beat up a small Hispanic girl. Like it.
Yeah.
You could sort of tell from her tone that like she had like, she was using gang language.
Okay. Yep. Gotcha.
To sort of challenge me, right? So it's in and out of English and in and out of Spanish, and I'm like, wow, like that did not fit your description there for a second. And then finally it dawned on me, and I said, I really like your necklace. Where did you get that necklace? It was like a cross, and it totally stumped her. She looked down at herself, and she goes, oh, I got it at Dillard's. And the gentleman next to her, grabs onto her, sits her down, and says, hey, he's with his family, leave him alone. He's not bothering anyone. Wow. He swaps seats with her. And I'm still thinking about stabbing her with my fork. I'll be honest with you. But what threw me for a loop is, whenever we did any kind of training, I always pictured, the big 6'7" both directions guy.
Yep.
I'm not a little dude. I'm 220 pounds and I'm 6 feet tall. Okay. So I was just like, whoa, lady, like you're challenged. Same thing. Like you're barking up the wrong tree. But I mean, what seemed like probably a minute and a half to 2 minutes of pause was just a brief couple of seconds. Mm-hmm. But it totally changed my logic of thinking. I immediately started letting my students say, you need to think about teenagers that challenge you. How are you going to handle that? You need to think about the old lady that challenges you, or the, not just the guys, because I never thought in a million years some little pipsqueak female who, again, victim selection. It was going to get bad, really bad. So, and then what does that look like for me if I am defending myself? I don't care. I'm deflecting her, right? Like everybody in the restaurant is going to think I am hurting her.
Right. Yeah. And you're just trying to not let her hurt you. And, self-defense, what's our buddy Dave always say? Defense is losing slowly.
Yeah. Right. When I was raised in a military family, so and I went infantry, so like
Okay.
our motto is always, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. So
Yeah,
it
exactly.
would have been ugly. So
Yeah.
I used my secret language with my wife when she got back to the table, so we could boot scoot out of there as soon as the kids wrapped up their dessert. And
Right.
I told her what happened when we got in the car, and she was like, "I'm going back in there." I was like, "No, you
No.
little angry Italian woman, get back in here. We're going home."
Yeah, we got it solved. It's good.
Which is really cool. I've got a son, actually. He's up there in New York. He's serving with the 10th Mountain Division. He's out
Oh,
doing,
really?
yeah, he's doing some fun stuff right now, but I'll have to send him your way, because I know that he loves to train too. So
Yeah, yeah. He's only about 3 hours from me.
perfect. Which in New York, that means that you're down the street, because there's probably not a lot of places to shoot up there.
Yeah, not up there.
Right.
There are a couple clubs up that way, but not much. And if he can't get trigger time on base, then there's not much he can do outside.
Yeah, he gets to have a little bit of fun on base, but your personal weapons and everything have to be checked in. And
Yep.
some of his personal weapons aren't legal in New York, and if they're not legal in New York, then you can't have them in New York. So
yeah, so they're better just staying on base in their little locker.
yeah, my other boy's in Hawaii, so I get to hang on to their collection until they come home. So
Right.
right now it's a wall decoration.
Yep. There you go.
So what's kind of like, what made you choose New York? I mean, you lived there your whole life. Like, what's the craziest stuff you have to deal with?
It's
How easy?
So I was born here.
Permit.
Was born about a half an hour southeast of here in a town or a city called Canandaigua. It's an old Indian term. I think it's called like the chosen place or something. I used to know what it means, but I've just forgotten. But imagine when I have to do like a fingerprint card for a background check somewhere. I got to squeeze 14 letters of a city name in there plus a state. Got to write really small to get my place of birth on there.
Yeah.
But I've kind of stayed here because, family's here, my connections are here. And when I started the business, I just fell into this niche of, let's get in here and then let's flesh it out. Let's just stay there.
Yeah.
And it's really developed. I got a network here. I got a team of 16 instructors that work with me. And it's just home base. It's really what it is.
I heard that it's easier to get a license from the state than it is to get from the city. And if you get one from the city, that you can carry in the state, but if you get one from the state, you can't carry in the city.
Yeah, pretty much. It takes almost an act of God to get one in New York City. You can get a premise permit or a possession permit fairly easy, but even then it's still harder than the carry permit that you can get in New York State.
Okay.
But yeah, it's New York City. So give you a quick hit on this. New York was one of the first creators of a pistol permit system. Ours started up in 1911, and it was the Sullivan Act, because the political people down in Tammany Hall in New York City did not want the undesirables to have weapons, and they wanted to give them permission. So they wanted to track, and they wanted to, basically be in charge of who was able to carry weapons. And, at the time it was immigrants. It was all the immigrants that were coming in, through the Statue of Liberty. And then they got tired of all these years of them coming in, and now they wanted to limit it. So, fast forward where we are, we're in upstate New York. So if New York, the shape of New York, it's got like the long nose along Lake Ontario, we're about midway on the bridge of the nose.
Yeah.
And we're almost as far away from New York City as you can get, other than Buffalo or way up at the top, up by Canada, where the Canada and Vermont meet New York. So
do you have a big Second Amendment group up there in New York? Are they active, participating in legislative action to try and get better rights going up there?
There are a few. There's New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, which is the state level of the NRA. They do quite a bit of work. Then we have Shooters Committee on Political Education, or otherwise known as SCOPE. They have county chapters all over the place. There's a New York State gun owners, and there's a couple other groups, but they're all unfortunately doing their own thing.
Yeah.
They're not congealing into, you've got like in Ohio, you've got the Buckeye State Association. It sounds like your group in Arizona is pretty congealed into one massively powerful group.
Yeah, we only have one. And my goal this year is to try and really expand that. And I've got a good working relationship with the Buckeye Firearms Association because they're involved in Faster Saves Lives. And we're working with them to try and bring Faster Saves Lives to Arizona, as like a separate wing for them, so that they're not constantly, because they're already pretty tied up in Ohio. This would allow them to have more stuff going on the West Coast, so we can start getting Texas and Oklahoma, New Mexico, Nevada,
right?
And other schools and churches trained to prevent the whole active shooter thing. So it kind of brings us to the point. We've had this recent incident happen down there in Texas, and I saw your post. You're going to be putting on a seminar in your area up there in New York State. Tell us a little bit about that seminar and what you're hoping to do with that.
Yeah, so the seminar we're doing, I've attended quite a bit of training for active shooter mitigation preparedness response. Most of it's been through ALICE training, which is an acronym for alert. Alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evacuate. Then there's been the civilian response to active shooter events that the federal government put together, Homeland Security did. There's the USCCA had a really good program that they developed a number of years ago for countering the mass shooter threat. So I've kind of added a lot of research to it and watched some of the other outfits like the Buckeye Firearms Association and some of the other where they've done teacher education, they've done participant education where it's been more, I guess you could say lecture based, but they also have done the immersion therapy type where they've gotten them together and put them through scenarios, and they do actual drills and they do actual role player setups. And the program results are phenomenal. Every time I talk to somebody who's been through it, the participants feel like they're better informed, but better armored, and they're paying attention and they're looking for it, and they're paying, they've got resources, they've got the education to look for the people at risk and to look for the factors that might put somebody else at risk. And that's really what we're trying to get going. This seminar is going to be a blend of all of that. It's going to have really what we're going to get into is how often does this really happen? It is happening more, but it's not as frequent as we're led to believe because but they get the news so much because of the nature of the assault.
What's being put out right now is that there's over 200 mass shootings per year in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And a few years ago, they changed the numbers for measuring that statistic.
Yep.
And that's where a lot of these higher numbers are coming from. It used to be that you had to have 5 or more people killed in order to be considered a mass shooting. And now they've lowered that standard down to, I believe, 2. Okay.
It used to be 4 a couple of years ago. Now it's gone down.
Yeah. So that immediately does what to our statistics? Well, now there's more that fit the criteria.
Yep.
The numbers appear larger, and now we can make this claim. And I hate statistics just as much as everybody else. I really, really do.
You can make them read whatever you want, depending on how you put it out there.
You really can. Somebody sent me an article that said, well, here, look at these facts. And then the paragraph describing how they got the numbers was longer than the article describing what they found once they mathematically picked out what they needed to get the narrative that they wanted. I was like, did you not pay attention to that whole top paragraph?
It
was incredible. So do you guys, have you had a lot of schools reach out? I know I personally have already had a lot of, I've always been doing stuff with churches. So, and a lot of churches here in Arizona have a kindergarten, and a lot of churches here is also like a private school Monday through Friday.
Okay. Yep.
We have privately owned Christian schools here. We have charter schools, which is great. They're basically like civilian owned schools. And then, because they're teaching a certain number of kids, they get some of the state funds to help pay for their schooling. So it's not quite a private school. It's more, it's just like a public school, except, you parents get a lot more involved with the kids. There's no buses picking them up and dropping them off. The parents are doing that. They tend to be a little bit smaller, and the curriculum tends to be a whole lot harder,
Mm-hmm.
in my personal opinion.
Yeah,
And
you get a better student and a more, more prepared young adult to get out into the world usually.
when I'd love to take credit for finding it, but my wife was in charge of that. She's like, "You got to school. It's awesome. It's amazing." Like there was a year waiting list she had, and she asked because she was pregnant. She was trying to get the first one enrolled, and
Wow.
like a year or two before kindergarten, he could go to kindergarten, so he could get on the waiting list. And then she was pregnant with the other one, and she's like, "Can I enroll her now?" And they told her, "No, you have to wait till it's actually born." And I got such a kick out of it because she came home frustrated. It's
Talk about future planning.
She's like, "I'm 8 months. It's practically here." Like,
Yeah, really.
I don't know what the big deal is. Like, I want her on the I want them to go to school together. I'm like, honey, it's a waiting list. Like, I'm sure people are going to drop out and she's going to get in.
Yeah.
And the kids loved it up until they got to about high school. And they're like, "Hey, we want to go to public high school." And I had to prepare them for that because it was a bit of a culture shock.
I'm sure.
But they were better prepared for it. They were better prepared
Yeah.
for it. And it had to do with the school being so small. Like they wanted a greater audience of friends for the social interaction portion of it, but they were so well
True.
by then. I think the charter school really got them off to a great start.
Good. Yeah. And that's what you want, that way they can handle the rest of it. I've seen a lot of, like years ago when I went to school, we, as we know, in any field there, you got really stellar people and you got really people that just barely do the minimum. And there was a little bit of a stigma on homeschooling. And it was like, oh, you were sheltered. You just didn't get out. You weren't allowed to interact with other kids. And that quickly got dispelled once you got to know some of the kids that are being homeschooled or charter schooled or private schooled. And then you found out that they were actually getting a hell of a lot better education than some of the public schools. So, you get what you pay for, I guess, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, so I've gotten contacted a lot by local schools and stuff. It's good here in Arizona. We actually have really great firearm laws. I mean, getting a CCW or anything, like if you meet the standard, you can have it. We have no outlawed weapons to my knowledge, except for maybe the blackjack. We just legalized nunchucks a year or two.
You're just teasing now. Stop it.
Oh yeah, I'm teasing. So like automatic knives, totally fine. Brass knives,
Yeah.
totally fine.
Right.
Because tools it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you're not using it in the commission of a crime, who cares what you're walking around with? But
Right. Don't be an idiot.
don't be an idiot. I mean, it's a simple, just live and let live. That's really all Americans want is just leave me alone. Let me do my thing.
And yeah, exactly. I'm not going to hurt anybody. So why should you worry about what I'm going to do?
Right. One of my favorite.
I had a discussion with somebody just the other day, and they were trying to impose their feelings about firearms and self-defense. And I said, look, just because you don't like them, it doesn't mean I don't like them, and you can't make me not like them. It's irresponsible of you, and it's emotionally stunted of you to do that. And I said, look, I don't like the car you drive. I'm not going to say you can't drive a car.
Yeah, why are you driving around that $80,000 SUV with 6 passenger seats? Who needs 6 passenger seats?
That's right.
Why do you have a 30-gallon fuel tank? You only need 10. And why does the speedometer go to 120? The speed limit is 65. Nobody needs to go faster than 65.
Right. And you don't need to drive your car every day. So you know what? There are places you are not going to be able to drive your car.
And we use driving comically in the firearms industry because everybody owns a car. So we're trying to relate to the other side. And they quickly point out, but you have to get a driver's license to drive a car. And it's like, but that's not a right.
It's a privilege.
And they just don't get that part.
No, they don't. But in answer to your question, yes. In the past, probably, I would say 6 to 8 years, maybe. I've worked with probably a dozen or two churches that had school setups in, or were just churches that were at risk in certain demographics and certain faiths. And then the school systems up here in New York are very, if it's a word, nepotistic. We'll use a better word, institutionalized.
Yeah.
Because if it's outside of their scope of control and I guess you could say blessing, they don't want you to do it. A number of years ago, I had a free teachers event. I had worked with one of my colleagues, Clint Macro, who started this National Train the Teacher Day, and I was kind of in on the early phases of it. And I did a couple years of it. And I had a free training day. I put it out to every teacher I know. I know a lot. And they tried to share it out to their networks. And a few of them actually got nasty emails from their security director or their department heads or their union to say, you cannot put unapproved content out there that we haven't looked at and we haven't okayed.
Yeah.
And a few of them fought it, and they got threatened with their jobs. They're like, well, if you go to this training, you will not have a job. We're like,
isn't that crazy?
Wait a minute.
Like we may not even use it. Like I just want the educational benefit of hearing what they have to say. I might get there and find out they're a bunch of Looney Tunes and I don't like any of the stuff.
Right.
If I go, I can at least maybe summarize, write a report, submit it to you, let you know what it was it discussed. You guys can get your thoughts on it. Mm-hmm. And then we can vote on whether or not we want to approve it or disapprove it. But to say you can't go to it, learn anything about it, doesn't make sense.
Well, I can't, I'm not going to use names or districts or anything, but I had quite a few teachers that actually did show up, and their attitude was, it's on a Saturday. It's my free day. You can't tell me what I can do on my day off. I'm doing this for personal growth and gain. And, we taught them trauma care, first aid, medical stuff. We taught them the basics on identifying a person at risk or a person that might be potentially violent and making potential threats towards a facility. And they were like, this was great. It was generic enough that it made sense. And it didn't target a school or a district or a church. It just said, here's a building, here's a bunch of people inside the building, and here are the risks that you need to be aware of, and here's what you can do to mitigate them. And they loved it. And they actually found that it dovetailed well with their own school curriculum and the shooter response that they were doing. And those that attended said, we shared it with everybody else. And they were actually jealous that they weren't able to make it.
Yeah. What is New York State's policy about guns on school campuses? Colleges, high schools, elementary schools, junior highs, private schools.
Yeah. Private school. So our last governor, which we've had a run of great governors lately. Our last governor, he actually removed the ability for a school superintendent to give explicit permission for somebody to possess firearms while on the school property.
Wow.
So he changed it at the state level. Private school can still set the rules as they want because they don't get state funding.
It's private property. It's not state funded.
Yep. It's a private school.
This is what a lot of Americans probably need to hear is, and this is one of the reasons why I'm getting really heavily involved in our Arizona state legislation, is because if we can get back to the grassroots of America and be involved in our local state level and get rid of federal funding for your individual state and elect the right people in your state, then you can work towards passing the right legislation to let the parents decide what's in the best interest of their child's education, period.
Yeah. It's kind of like what DeSantis did down in Florida. He's like, let the parent decide. Let the school doesn't get to indoctrinate the children. Let the parent decide what they should be learning and how they should be learned. And he kind of took some of the power away from some of the schools.
Yeah. I mean, there's another gentleman who I'm looking forward to having on the program here in the coming weeks, Mike Brown, based out of Illinois, who is a former law enforcement officer and firearms instructor. And, I think he said, he was working towards a veteran program, which has been it's been mentioned before in the past by others. Recruiting prior service veterans who honorably discharged, have firearms experience, training, etc. There's a lot of us veterans around that have children to go to schools. I personally have told my school that I would volunteer 1 day a week to be at their school so I could be a school resource officer, because people don't realize the expense involved with school resource officers. That, you know, if that person's salary, let's say it's 60,000 a year, and you only have
Right.
one officer on campus, you're probably still going to have two, because of the change of shift throughout the week. I mean, he has a full-time job someplace else, so you're probably gonna have two. So minimum, you're looking like 120 grand per school. And
Oh, yeah.
what if he has a sick day?
That's right.
And here in our major metropolitan area, Phoenix, we actually approved funding for school resource officers on school campuses, and the schools got to choose what to do with the funding. If they wanted to put it towards school resource officers, they could, while other schools wanted to use it towards counseling because, you know, police officers are scary on campus.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we saw basically a 50-50 mix, which is great because schools here are about a block apart. So, you know, the parent that wants their kid to go to a school that has armed resource officers has that available. And the one that wants to go to the school that doesn't have it has that available. And
Yeah. And that's
it lets criminals,
the way it should be.
you know, do I want to go to the one that has a police officer present, or do I want to go to the one that doesn't?
Right. Exactly.
I think it's fair. Horrible to say that.
Yeah. It's, so, you know, here in New York, schools are pretty much a gun-free zone. We tend to find that luckily we haven't had any issues that have made the news, any major issues. You know, here in the Rochester area, there's been students that have shown up with firearms and book bags, you know, because of one thing or other. And usually it's more of a defensive thing rather than I'm going to be a badass. But there have been a few that they've brought a gun to school because they want to intimidate somebody. They think this is, you know, this is a show of power. And it's a, you know, it's my badge of honor that I got this and I found it and I'm going to bring it to school and I'm going to show you it because I don't want you to mess with me.
Well, I think
but
you might probably have some of the same insights that I do. Like, again, we're talking about one tool.
Yep.
Okay. Which is an option. And I think that if you look at the rest of the campus and the procedures and policies you put in place, there's a lot of other things that would have to go wrong in order for you to be down to the very last option.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. So tell us about some of those other things. Like if you were to talk to a school and they're like, hey, listen, we can't have guns because it's New York, but what kind of things can we do right now to make our campus look more uninviting to the criminal, but, you know, not make all the students feel like they're being imprisoned?
Right. I get the pushback from some staffers and some administrative people that I've talked to, and they're like, well, I don't want to feel like I'm going to work in a prison. Well, you're not, because, you know, everybody you're dealing with in the school wants to be there to an extent. You know, they're not there because a court told them to. So you can get rid of that statement. But I get it where, you know, like, okay, well, we should have the freedom of movement. We should, but I hate using this phrase, but we're dealing with a new normal now. We're dealing with people, criminals, and mass shooters that will assault the school. You have to lock the doors. That, to me, that's the biggest key right there. If the doors are all secure and there's a single point of entry, whether it's a sally port setup where there's an outer door, you come in and there's, you know, there's a greeter window and then the inner door is locked. And as soon as that inner door,
help the listeners know, what do you mean by sally port?
So a sally port is more of a security setup where it's a transitional zone where it's secure. You're locked in this box, this area, until you're proven you can go past it. So you can come in the outer door, and it could be a hallway, it could be an entryway, it could be like in old houses they used to call them airlocks, because you would prevent the cold air from coming right into the house. So you had this breezeway entryway.
Maybe that's how you need to sell it in New York. Listen, I want to have save on
breezeway.
So we'll have a magnetically sealed door on the outside, and we'll buzz you in, and you get into the first area where we get a better picture of you to assess who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You show us your identification or whatever, and the doors behind you magnetically lock, and then we'll unlock the next set to let you in. And all this is to keep the heat from escaping in the winter.
There you go. Yeah, we just don't want to let all the heat out. It's expensive.
Makes sense to
Right?
me.
Yeah, I like it.
No point in opening all the doors simultaneously. That allows all the heat to escape from multiple entrances.
Yeah,
You can just funnel
yeah.
everybody in through the primary entrance. But
Mhm.
hey, I mean, fire code demands that all doors open from the inside in case of emergency. So don't worry, that fail safe will still be there.
Yep. You can still
But
get out.
we just want to control how students come in and
Yeah.
out, how
Well,
guests.
if it gets too hot inside, you can always open the door to let some of the heat out. That way you can chill it a little bit, right?
One door at a time.
One door at a time, though. Only one door at a time.
Yeah. No,
So
that's one of the things that we talk about here. So in Arizona, it's kind of complicated. Our campuses, it's not cookie cutter. None of our school campuses are the same. Some of them are pretty old. And so
okay.
if you sort of think about like a trailer where it's a building with all the doors on the outside to each classroom.
Yes.
So in high school, when they rotate, they go out of the building, they walk down the walkway to the other door in the same building and go back in. Um, and it has separate air conditioning and everything for each classroom. Whereas back east, you guys typically have like one big building with one big boiler in the basement, that kind of stuff. Am I correct?
Yeah. There's a lot of schools now because of growth. They call them portables. I mean, it's a portable classroom, but it's not very portable anymore.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the same thing you described. That access control for those is horrible unless they can put the portable school classroom inside of an area like, we have fences around playgrounds to prevent kids from running out into traffic, right?
You have fences?
We do.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, when we use them, we do. Uh, so if we were able to put a protective fence to prevent people from running off the campus into traffic or, into the neighborhood, then we can put all the portable classrooms inside that fenced in area and just have access control there. And
That
that
makes
could work.
sense. I mean, you
You
got to
know,
keep the dogs out.
yeah, we don't want the wild animals to come after us.
You guys have bears.
The neighborhood dogs.
You have bears.
We have bears in certain areas of the state. Yes.
Yep.
Most of the time they're more scared of us than we are of them, but we don't, they don't know that.
No.
So, they kind of get a little aggressive and a little bit close, but as soon as you start making noise, they run away.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing, and if you like, I look at trends and statistics myself, but I look at what's realistic about them. And then you boil into the typical situation, right? So the typical situation in all of these attacks that in recent history have been somehow a door wasn't locked, wasn't sealed, the access was compromised, which allowed them to gain entry. It was either easy to break the door open or it was just open enough for them to just literally stroll into the school and nobody stopped them.
Yeah, the most recent incident so far, what we hear is that a teacher had a door propped open because
Yep.
that door that locks behind you is really inconvenient when you want to make multiple trips to your car
Yeah,
to carry your bags in and out of the school.
exactly. And that, I would not want to be that individual today, because if it is true that that's how, because apparently the shooter looked for a couple other entrances and they were secured, and
Yeah.
then he found this one and went in, and then the chaos ensued. But I would not want to be that teacher and sit there after this tragedy and thinking I'm the one that left that door open because I was lazy.
They're going to have that what if I had not done that? The rest of
And as far as from my perspective, they are liable and responsible for each and every one of those deaths.
I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be held liable here in the coming days. It's going to be really,
yeah.
I really want to hear the rest of the facts. I mean, when these things happen, I personally, I like to study them to find out what we can learn from them. And this is a point in training that we can drive home the importance of, securing the doors. And this is no different than you at your house. I mean, when you come home,
exactly,
at night, you lock your windows and doors. You set your alarm before you go to bed at night. You maybe have exterior cameras. These are all things that I talk about in my CCW classes. Like, if you don't want to worry about somebody creeping into your house in the middle of the night, then here's the essential tools. I'm a big fan of security screen doors and windows.
yeah.
because they'll spend 30 minutes outside the house. You'll capture them on videotape. You can eat a bag of popcorn while you wait for the police to arrive, and they handle it. You know, we can
Almost
do,
like that train coming down the track again, right?
yeah, and we can do the same thing with schools. There's no reason why, like, I want to say most of the schools here in Arizona have a tall iron rod fence, greater than 6 feet, around the school property. I mean,
Okay.
every campus in Arizona now has an wrought iron fence around the school property. So even though we have an open campus and there's lots of people moving around and that sort of stuff, they've got plenty of places that they can go.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's not easy to walk on a campus, and, you know, things to look for, right? What are some things to look for? And I tell everybody all the time, you're looking for what's out of place.
Yeah.
You don't, I mean, they think that, like, you know, ex-military or, you know, ex-law enforcement, that they have some sort of sixth sense. And really it's just a matter of paying attention. Who belongs here and who doesn't? And
Right.
don't be afraid to challenge the person who doesn't belong here.
The thing that I tell everybody is you have lots of repetitions of knowing what normal people look like.
Yep.
Normal activity, normal body language. You just don't know it yet. And then when you start reading that body language, you realize, okay, that guy's not normal because he stands out from what I know to be typical or normal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing, you know, like, let's put it right into context. You know, every time we've had a shooting, you know, it wasn't like a sudden rolling assault. You know, like the shooter will case the joint. He will check the school out. He will look for the openings. He will watch things to find the right time for them to go in and cause their damage. Whereas people think he just miraculously just drives up the driveway and runs in the school and starts, you know, just starts doing damage. You know, go back to the recent event we had here in Buffalo a couple weeks prior, where I've seen the helmet cam video, and it was very, you know, very disturbing. I'd like to think I'm pretty inoculated to seeing violence, and experiencing violence.
That's pretty violent.
I was shocked. I looked at it twice and I just sat there and I was like, I needed a moment to, like, all right, I got to gather my thoughts, because I was stunned. And
I didn't see I saw a good portion of it. I didn't see how it finished. So obviously,
yeah, it was,
he just gave up and surrendered because they were able to arrest him.
yeah.
But
I don't,
start of it, the determination, the
deliberateness of him. He, you know, and he's talking to himself, okay, here we go, here it comes. And he gets out of the car. And there's a few of us that we talked about those first couple of victims. And, you know, we actually said, you know what, if that was us there, we don't know if we would have had enough time to react before we got shot. He literally parked the car, slammed it into park, and got out and started shooting. There was no warning, nothing.
Yep.
And that was one of the atypical occurrences in a mass shooting event. Whereas, you know, like in the school, you know, in recent school events, they've gone back and looked on camera, and this person was on campus for a length of time before they even committed the issues, before they started.
Well, and this guy in Texas, he had a cousin who had a son that went to that school, and she said that she heard him asking lots of questions like, what time do you guys break for lunch? And someone else had reported that he was talking to the school resource officers about what time their change of shift was and all that sort of stuff. So,
you don't think that's curious?
Those are curious questions. And from the private security side, anybody that asks those kinds of questions, you should have bells and whistles going off in your head.
Yeah.
Who are you? Let me see your ID. Report that stuff to police early on. And because there's not a single cop, especially today, that's going to go, yeah, I don't want to, whatever. So it's a strange, creepy. No, they're going to be at the dude's house and they're going to start asking him questions. I heard you're at the school today. I heard you were asking these questions. You know, what's going on? And if they get any kind of sketch vibe, suspicion, they'll probably search the premises. And if they find a stockpile, this guy will be on a watch list. Okay. And you might have thwarted something.
Or they'll just, you know, hey, for your safety, let's secure those a little bit. You know, let's kind of take the access away and let's figure out what's going on. That's a lot where the system fails. You know, you in our discussion before we got online here, and in our discussion on the messenger, we were asking about like different things that I talk about people can do. And what I tell people is, number one, the awareness, but not just your awareness, but awareness of who typically does these. And you've got to study the bad guy to learn about the bad guy. And if we don't identify them by the clusters of signals that they give us, we're failing. We have to recognize it. But the other part of that is what we've also seen is the failure to act upon those clusters of signals.
Mm-hmm. Big time.
You know, you look at Parkland, you look at, the recent one we just had in Uvalde, and you look at some of the other ones. You look at, the one up in Rhode Island or Connecticut, a while ago. And you look at every single one. And yes, 2020 hindsight is very, very clear. But we need to learn from it, because we need to look for those signs in future events before they happen. We have to be precognitive. We have to be proactive. And we're not. We're doing a really bad job of it. We're looking for stuff, but we're not following through because we don't want to offend somebody. We don't want to make it difficult.
Yeah. And the other difficult thing is, let's say you're a teacher and you have a classroom of 30 students and you have one particular student who may be struggling, and you know that there's some home life issues and that sort of stuff. And you've tried talking to the parents, you tried to get this kid on track. You see that maybe getting picked on at school, all that sort of stuff. When you start creating like policies and procedures, like checkbox A, checkbox B, checkbox C, when you start doing that, you get into this realm where these things still get skipped because you're trying to follow policies and procedures so you don't violate anybody's rights.
Yeah.
I really think that we need to get back to just like be human. Sit down with the kid, talk to the kid, be human, offer an ear, get him to talk to the counselor, etc. Get him the help that he needs, get him the tutelage that he needs. I see too often that teachers are like, well, he's just not paying attention in class, and he's not applying himself, and he's the class clown. They kind of just keep brushing him off like everybody else does.
Right. And then they get forgotten, and then they create a problem.
Sure, the kid's going to be resistant because nobody else is stepping into his life and keeping their word. I mean, we're talking about kids that have had a lifetime of broken promises.
Yep.
So when you're stepping in there and you're asking them to trust you, you actually have to be there for them to trust, to help them get through whatever it is that they're going through. And, and the problem is like, how much do teachers get paid nowadays? Right.
In my opinion,
we're
not enough for the job they're doing. And what they're
we're not selecting from the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
So either the person is wildly passionate about teaching and they're committed and they don't care about the money, which that's few and far between. Or you have the teacher that, wanted to be an astronaut and, didn't get selected for the space shuttle. So they fell back to their secondary occupation, which is, well, I can teach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'll give you a save we had a couple years ago here. And everything was done correctly. We had an incident where somebody was made aware of a student potentially making a violent threat towards their school. And it was a public school. And what happened is the teacher keyed in on this individual very early. And it was kind of like what you said. They started talking to them. They interacted with them. And the student admitted, well, I am kind of feeling this way. This is, I'm, I don't know who my dad is. My mom is working too bad, two jobs. She can't be around. When she's around, she's tired. They just don't have an adult in their life that's giving them the structure that they need. So they're developing it on their own. And what happened is this person had somehow acquired a shotgun and acquired some shells. And they admitted that they were hoping to get some attention because they're not getting attention from anybody else. Mm-hmm. And they made a very veiled threat. It wasn't very overt, but it was enough that the teacher's like, hey, wait a minute. And he talked to them and he sat down with them and talked to them. And he's like, you know what? I think you need to, here's somebody else you can talk to. And he brought in somebody else. And then they're like, hey, you know what? I think we should bring in the local police department just to talk. They're not gonna, they're not gonna arrest you, but I think, they need to listen to you. And this child, this young adult became a resource for them because they learned so much from this child about the pre-activities, the pre-assault indicators that we all look for as self-defense people. But this child had just decided, I'm just going to get attention. I'm going to threaten my school.
Yeah.
And somebody listened and somebody said, like you said, they were human enough. And they sat down and the child admit, they finally got to admit, like, well, I was just kind of kidding. But this could have gone the other way very easily.
Sure.
And they could have ignored him. They could have blown it off, or they could have just said, oh, yeah, it's just, they're just acting out, they're just, 14 years old, whatever. And then next thing you know, they're showing up the next day with a shotgun tapping on the window, trying to get into the school.
Yeah, kind of, and the bullying, the picking, for years now, they've tried to solve the bullying issue. I think the bullying is worse now than it ever has been in history. In our day and age, if there was a bully at school, you stood up for yourself. And two of you ended up going to throwing blows.
That's what I did.
Both of you ended up getting in trouble or whatever. But honestly, the problem got solved. Somebody sat the two of you down. You had to shake hands and say it was over. And you learned how to resolve conflict. I think one of the big things for, I have 5 boys, 2 girls.
Oh, good. Yeah.
I've got a grandson and a granddaughter, but raising the boys, we have all these things that people talk about. Well, video games influence this and music influences that and all that sort of stuff. I sort of feel like America's lost a big moral compass. Okay. And for our home, the moral compass that we used was Christianity. Okay.
Okay, good. Yep.
It wasn't something that I forced on my kids. It was something that I introduced them to at a young age. And as they grew older and had more questions, I took the time to sit down and answer a lot of those questions. And I told them, I said, look, I don't want you to choose any particular faith or whatever to try and follow in your parents, etc. I want you to discover your faith for yourself, but you're going to have questions because I told my wife a long time ago, I said, we're not raising kids. We're raising adults in training. So
that's a good thing. That's a good way to say it.
I wanted them to learn how to think like an adult, how to question everything. I said, don't believe anything I tell you. Don't believe anything my mom tells you. When you hear something, you sort of have questions. We'll answer them for you, but like you be your own fact checker. Go find some reference books. Go study more information on it. Don't just take our word for it.
Right.
Because your parents aren't perfect. That was a standard we set in our house is, look, your parents aren't perfect. We don't have everything figured out.
Right. Critical thought. That's what you taught him. Critical thought.
I sort of teased my oldest son. I'm like, hey, you were our practice kid. So like, that's why you're the most screwed up. Like we got it mastered by the 7th.
Yeah, that's right. There you go.
That's why she's my little princess and she gets everything because she's perfect. The boys.
See? There you go. Yeah. Did they buy into that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. But they're like, well, why do you treat the girls like this and the boys like that? It's because you're men and no one's ever going to take anything easy on you. So I'm going to be the meanest, hardest, cruelest person in your life. So when you step outside this house, no one else will intimidate you.
That's right.
And then with my daughter, I'm still a man's man with my daughter, but I honestly spoil the hell out of her.
Oh, you have to.
Because I tell her all the time, whoever dates you is applying for my job. So
good way to put it.
If he doesn't have a house, he doesn't have a career, he doesn't have money saved, he doesn't provide you with all your wants and wishes, he better be a better version of me and fit all the categories.
Doesn't treat you like the princess that I've been treating you like.
Oh yeah. Oh, she's already.
He's not getting the job.
She's already. My youngest is 15. She's already done it. She's told so many dudes to pound sand because she's like, no one's going to talk to me that way.
I like it, and you know what? She might get called the B word a few times. She might get, and you know what? So what? Let her own it.
Right. She's loved no matter what at home, so it doesn't really matter.
There you go.
I really feel like because it's fine if you're not a faith-based home, but I really feel like you need to have a moral compass in your home. And
yes,
you need to be involved.
There has to be some guidance.
You have to be involved in your children. And I think a well-balanced home has both versions. You have the firmness of a father figure, but you have the softness of a mother figure to create that balance. And so if homes nowadays, I don't feel, it's fine if you're not religious, but what is the moral compass? Where are you deriving your belief system, and what are you ingraining in your kids, and the importance of human life? And it's your job to protect human life at all costs, even if it means sacrificing your life to do it. What does that look like?
It's amazing. And that's a lot of what's missing. Again, you go through the typical, checking off all the boxes of these mass shooters and these, the spree killers. And you look and you see how many commonalities just fit. And it's almost like if we could look at the commonalities and learn from them, we could use that as a model to maybe prevent future spree killers, or at least severely limit the occurrences.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I always try to do is give my kids responsibility. I heard somebody, a really famous commentator, talk about, we want kids to do dangerous things, but we want them to learn how to do dangerous things safely, right?
Exactly.
Playing on the jungle gym, swinging from the monkey bars, all that sort of stuff. You want to let your kids do that, but you want them to understand how to do that safely. If you go camping, you want them to learn how to start a fire without setting fire to the entire camp.
That's a good idea. Yep.
If you have fire extinguishers in the home, you want them to learn how to use it so that they can put out the small fire and know when it's too big of a fire and they should get out of the house altogether. But I think a lot of kids are starved for some of that responsibility. They're constantly having the unsafe things removed from their life. And what that does is it encourages them to want to go do those unsafe things out of supervision's way. Like, almost like the more you tell them no, the more they want to do it, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I've seen also is, with the responsibility comes consequences as well. And if you're giving them the responsibility to learn from a mistake, they're going to understand the consequences that can happen. So it's kind of you're giving them the parameters.
Yeah.
You can go do whatever you want, but if somebody gets hurt, you were wrong. Don't do that again. Right. If you get hurt, don't do that again. Right. You climb on the jungle gym, you fall off and you twist your arm or break your leg. Guess what? You've learned, there are consequences to you not doing this properly. I did the same thing with firearms when my kids were 5 years old. I taught them the concept of firearm safety. And I told them, here are the consequences. You have a responsibility now at 5 years old. You understand firearm safety. The consequences of you not knowing it means you could get hurt.
Right. Well, there's so much stuff that I've done with my kids. I remember early on talking to them, when they started coming out with the run, hide, fight. My kids were way littler then. I said, well, I don't know if that's in the correct order. You guys,
run, hide, fight. Yep, it is.
I want you to have the mindset of fighting first. Okay. While you're running, have the mindset of fighting first while you're finding a place to hide.
Exactly.
If everybody else is going out that door, you may not want to. I want you to think when this stuff is going on. And I'm not a big proponent of doing lockdown drills at schools, teaching kids, the people who are most likely going to be active shooters, what you're going to do when there's an active shooting. Because you're basically teaching where all the doors are.
Active response. You got to do it.
I think a way schools can mitigate that is by changing what you do so that selected at random, if the A alarm goes off, we do this. If the B alarm goes off, we do that. Something along those lines so that we're not always doing the same thing every single time. The same goes with fire drills.
Yeah.
Practicing going out the same door every single time. How do you know the fire's not going to be there that day? What are the doors?
The problem with the school districts is the big A word, accountability. They have to be able to know where everybody is at any given time. The history of like the lockdown drills came from Los Angeles when gangs were driving by and trying to shoot each other, and bullets were spraying at the schools because that's where all the kids were hanging out. They were supposed to be in gangs or in school, not ganging, but they were doing everything else. So they started doing lockdown drills where it's basically lockdown, get down.
Yeah.
And it was hide. So you're not in the windows, you're behind the brick. you're behind some protection. And they decided at some point that that would be really good for an active shooter thing. But the problem is they didn't really take into context the mobility of the active shooter in the school, and the fact that the get down lockdown basically makes you a sitting duck.
Makes you immobile.
It makes you immobile. You can't do anything.
Fish in a barrel.
Yeah. Whereas locking the doors, even if, at the sound of any kind of intruder alarm, one buzzer goes off, whether it's the A alarm, B alarm, or whatever, all the teachers without hesitation, lock doors. Just slam the doors, lock them, and then barricade the doors so they can't get in. And then they tell the students, okay, you need to get into blind corners of the classroom so they can't see if you can't block the windows. You need to start thinking about how we're going to get out of this classroom. Are we on the ground floor or second floor? Can we get kids out of this? Do we have an escape ladder? Do we have any ways to evacuate? But for the most part is, what can we do if this person comes in this room?
Right.
Can we fight with what we got? Every classroom has a fire extinguisher. They are my favorite improvised weapon of choice. It's a two-pronged assault that I could use with that thing. You come in the room, I can gas you out with whatever's inside that. If it's water or it's dry chem, which most of the time is dry chem, they keep longer. I can hit you with that. It's like, getting hit with a giant flour bag with a lot of pressure. And then if you get through that, I can hit you with the canister.
Yeah.
The average 10-year-old can pick up a chair and throw it 15 feet.
Yeah.
We got to, and if, people ask me, it's like, Dave, if you can give people like 3 things to do in an active shooter. Number 1, lock the doors. I always throw it out there. You just got to lock the doors. As long as you can get out, that's fine, but you got to prevent somebody from getting it. 2, you got to have a plan. You got to have a realistic plan, not something that you hope is going to work. And number 3, you've got to give everybody in that room, teachers, kids, other staffers, everybody in that room or the school, you've got to encourage them, and you got to give them permission to fight. You really just got to tell them, look, in this case, it's okay. You need to do it, because if you don't, it's going to get really bad, and you could die. And we don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
And I did that with my kids growing up. I'm like, look, if somebody attacks you, attack back. We'll sort it out later. Okay. If a school shooter comes in and they're doing all sorts of damage, you need to get out of that room. Just whatever you got to do, get out of that room. And if you can leave. That's the biggest key. But you got to, like you said, you've got to be prepared to fight, because that's what you might have to do to get out.
I'm a big proponent too of combat medicine, and
yes,
learning how to apply tourniquets to stop the bleed. And in a classroom setting, if I was a teacher and I had 30 students, I'd want to have a pretty good sized kit. Like I would, and you know what, I'll tell you what, I've done this too, is I've approached teachers and I said, hey, what do you have for medicine? You can come to class with me, etc. And I will give you 30 tourniquets. I will give you 30 pressure bandages. I will give you 30 of all this stuff to put in one big bag. So if this were to happen, like, you can go around and just start telling kids, hey, put pressure here, put pressure there, get all the bleeding to stop, go back around, put the tourniquets on.
Yep.
Because we've learned now, like every soldier, every law enforcement officer, and now every instructor in every range, everybody's carrying a personal tourniquet on their body, because stopping the bleed, you're going to die from blood loss. So not even having a gun, if you have somebody who's wielding a machete or a knife or something like that, you're still talking arterial bleeds that need to be stopped as quickly as possible to mitigate the numbers of deaths.
And we kind of, it's not really a joke, but it sounds funny, but when you really think about it, it's not. I've never seen a tourniquet free zone. I've seen gun free zones, no weapons allowed, but I have yet to see anybody say that I can't bring a tourniquet or a first aid kit in where I'm going.
Right. No bandages here, damn it.
Yeah. We don't want you to we want you to leak all over the place. But the key that I tell people also is, you know what, I have a better chance of saving a life with my tourniquet and my pressure bandage or a bunch of gauze or a t-shirt, knowing where to apply it and where to pinch it off, than I do with my gun.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to be more appropriate. I run through scenarios, mall shooters, if it's not right in front of me, I'm not going to be that guy that's going to go hunt it down yet, because I might be mistaken for that mall shooter by another concealed carrier. And that's, everybody wants to be a hero until it's time to do it, and it's going to suck. But if somebody's hurt near me and I can get them to safety, I'm going to need some first aid gear. And like you said, that's, I've done the same thing. I've offered to teachers, look, I'll give you a free training. I'll give you a kit. I'll give you a tourniquet. I just want you to be able to save a life, and, let's outfit your classroom, or let's influence that. Let's spend the school money better.
Yeah.
And let's get better locks on doors. Let's get 3M makes a great product, and, for window film that makes the glass a lot more break resistant nowadays. We're actually,
now.
we're going to put it on our house.
Yeah.
Because we got really big ass windows, and we're going to put it on our house just because we want to make sure that we have a little more warning when somebody tries to come in the house.
Have you seen that bulletproof film?
Yeah, that's scary. It's what, 12 mil thick.
Yeah. The Phoenix police officer that started, well, I don't know if he started it, but he works in cooperation with 3M. He was testing it at our range years ago. And so I got to witness it, because I was like, there's no way, whatever, dude. 44 Magnum. But no, it stops bullets. It allows them, so it doesn't allow it to go in, but it still allows you to shoot out, which I was like, dude, I want some of that. I want that for my truck. I want that.
That's excellent. I like, put it on the windshield.
Put it on everything, man.
Yeah.
All right.
What if it'll work on the door panels too, instead of that ceramic coating that people put on? Maybe put that stuff on.
All right. So you have this seminar coming up. This is in the Rochester area.
Yep, it's in the Rochester, right at my home base classroom. It's pretty cool. I've got a really cool training facility that I have 2 classrooms on, and I do all of my classroom based stuff right on site. I leased it out about 8 years ago now. And so it's probably the best move I made.
So you got plenty of room for students. How do they go about finding out more information about this? Where can they learn about this seminar you're putting on?
They can hit me if they go through my website at safeinrochester.com. Then they click on classes. It'll take them to our course management page, and it's under special events.
How long of a class is it? Is it one day?
It's going to be about a 3 to 3.5 hour informational seminar, and it's just to get the juices flowing. Think of it as the teaser.
Okay.
We actually, with a gentleman who is now retired, he was the master instructor for the Rochester Police Department. We developed a three levels of training for churches and schools and places of business. And the first level is exposure and information and a little bit of hands-on. Then we go into more hands-on, where we give them training in a clinical sense. And then the last level is where we come to your facility and we put on a mass casualty incident, mass shooter, whatever. And we put on a role play scenario-based training for you to experience it and put those skills to work. So this is like the teaser to get started.
Fantastic. And folks,
and it's free.
And it's free. That's the best.
And it's free.
It's free 99.
Yeah, free 99.
All right, so they can check out your website.
Yep.
And as well as the other classes and stuff like that. And if somebody wants to take some firearms training, they can find out more information there as well. You got anything else you want to add?
Just like what I want people to do is just to be educated. I don't want them to not know what they could do. A lot of people won't go to training courses because they're scared of how they're going to look. Their ego might get bruised. But you know what? We don't bruise egos. We're not those guys that yell at people. We're not the guys that treat you like you don't know what you're doing. We actually treat you like you want to learn, and we make it happen for you. But the biggest thing, especially with this topic here, is we want you to be aware. We want you to be concerned, but we don't want you to be afraid to where you're fearful of and you freeze. You're not acting. You're just stuck and you don't know what to do. My goal is to give you something. If you can walk out of this 3-ish hour, I suspect it's going to go longer with all the questions, and the people that I've seen sign up, I know are very dedicated learners, and they're going to ask a lot of questions, which is good. But at the end of this seminar, if you walk away with one thing that you can take back to your church, your business, or your school and say, look, we need to do this, then it's worth it. Because if you can get them to do it, you're probably going to save a life. And I'll paraphrase something that the other, we call it the other side of this issue, the anti-guns, the self-defense people, the anti-constitutional, whatever. If it saves just one life, then it's worth it. So let's get proactive and save some kids' lives, and let's make this worth it, because that's what we have to do. And if we don't, if you just think somebody else is going to solve the problem, it's wrong. Another phrase that I picked up on years ago when I started reading Dave Spalding's stuff is, we need to be involved. No one's coming to save us.
Well, quit leaving it up to the other guy.
Yeah.
Like my family, my personal defense, it's personal. Like I take full responsibility for my safety and my children's safety. And I'm a very involved parent. Like that. I'm on top of my kids' grades. And if they're slacking, I want to know why.
Mm-hmm.
Like they earn their freedom in my house. You make straight A's, you can tell me to go F off anytime you want, because you're making.
That's
right. You're saving your money, then you can hang out with your friends all you want, because like you're making the money to pay for everything.
That's right.
So I don't know. Everybody says, "Oh, we have to do something. We have to do something," but it always sounds like they want to make somebody else do something. It's like,
yeah, somebody needs to do something, is what they should be saying.
Like, no, stop putting that on law enforcement and everybody else. What are you doing? What are you doing to make your child's school safer? Like, get involved in your child's school. Find out what the need is and make that need happen. Whether it's volunteering time, volunteering dollars, whatever it is, so that your teachers in your school have the resources that they need, so that they are independent and not reliant on others. That's really what American freedom is all about, is being self-sustaining,
self-reliant.
Self-reliant. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, cool, man. I'm going to put your website and everything down there in the description along with mine. And I would say this too. So if you guys are in a different state, let's say like Florida or, Tennessee or something, and you're like, hey, who do you guys know that in this particular area? They can reach out to me, or they can reach out to you.
Yeah.
We know lots of trainers around the country. All of them are fired up right now. All of them are probably doing similar stuff to this. So you don't have to fly to Arizona or New York. There might be something locally that we can put you in touch with. And the same,
exactly.
The same goes for firearms instructors. Whoever sees this, you guys might have knowledge of something in your area that does this. Reach out to us, share that information with us so we can put folks in contact with you.
Exactly.
Dave, I appreciate you giving your time today. I'm really looking forward to hear how this seminar goes for you up there in New York. You guys,
I'll give you an update. I will. I'll definitely give you an update.
Okay. And going forward, if there's ever anything you need in Arizona, feel free to reach out. Let me know.
I'll be in touch. I think I haven't been to Arizona ever. Well, actually, I've been in the Phoenix airport, but it was just for a connection. It was all screwed up.
Dude, do not come here in June, July, or August.
Okay. Yeah, I know. It gets a little warm there. I am looking for, a host for December, January.
It's cold, but
get out of New York.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Yeah,
dude, it's like, I don't know. Sometimes you get lucky. January's actually a really good time frame for classes here in Arizona for hosting. I think it's because of the end of the year and people are filing their taxes and all that sort of stuff, like the 3rd or 4th week of January. And for Arizonans, it's like, oh, it's cold, I don't want to go outside. But for guys that shoot, they're like, dude, this is the best weather to do it in.
Yeah, we'll have to we'll talk offline, and we'll put something together. It'll be fun to travel out and see you and meet some new peeps and check out a new state. I got to put a pin in Arizona now.
There you go. All right, everybody, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll keep be sure to like, follow, share, all that sort of stuff. You guys know what to do, and I'll keep you posted with who we're going to have on next. So we'll see you later.